The fall of the United Kingdom.
The United Kingdom is the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, home to Shakespeare, and then NHS, and one of the richest nations in history. And yet, ask someone living in a northern town or waiting on a hospital list, and they might tell you something different.
The waiting list for routine hospital treatments in England has increased by 9,000 to around 7.37 million at the end of June.
Raising the alarm on behalf of the nearly 1 million children who live in poverty in the UK.
A generation of young people may never be able to own their own homes.
And in this video, we're diving into why many believe that in 2025, parts of Britain are starting to resemble the third world. Let's start with the most basic need, shelter. In the UK today, homes are completely out of sync with wages. Across England, the median house costs over 8 times the average full-time salary. In London, it's even worse, often over 12 times. And renting, don't get your hopes up. Fewer than 5% of properties listed are affordable for people on housing benefits. Then there's also a social housing crisis. Over 1.3 million households are on waiting lists. And in some areas, especially London, you could be waiting over 100 years for a family-sized council house. And this has forced more and more families into temporary accommodations, hotels, hostels, and single rooms with shared children. As of 2025, over 164,000 children in England are technically homeless, living in temporary housing. And for the younger generation, home ownership has collapsed. Back in 1989, over half of 25 to 34-year-olds owned their home. Today, that number has halved. Almost 5 million young adults now live with their parents. Not out of choice, but because they simply can't afford to move out. In a G7 country, these numbers are staggering. And apart from housing, we also have to talk about healthcare, specifically the NHS. It's free, universal, and in serious trouble. Over 7.3 million people are on waiting lists for treatments in England alone. That's roughly 1 in 8 people. 200,000 of them have waited for over a year. In hospitals, emergency rooms are overwhelmed. Corridor care has become normal, patients waiting on trolleys in hallways, some even being treated in parking lots on makeshift tents, and even ambulance queues outside of hospitals because there's simply not enough beds available. And then there's life expectancy. It's falling in many parts of the UK. In Glasgow, the average boy born today lives 11 years less than one born in Westminster. The UK now lags behind Western Europe in cancer survival rates, emergency response time, and even mental health access. To be fair, the NHS still has brilliant doctors and nurses, but they're burnt out, underpaid, and leaving in record numbers. The UK has fewer hospital beds per capita than almost any other OECD country. Facilities are also aging, budgets are stretched, and over a decade of austerity, the system is now finally showing some serious cracks. And being poor in Britain today doesn't just mean being unemployed. 2/3 of working age adults live in poverty actually have a job. They're called the working poor, people with paychecks who still can't afford rent, heating, or groceries. Since 2007, real wages in the UK barely moved. In fact, once you adjust for inflation, the average earnings are lower today than they were 15 years ago. Meanwhile, costs have really skyrocketed. Inflation hit 11.1% in 2022, the highest in 4 decades. Energy prices doubled, food costs soared, and the UK's welfare safety net, it's one of the stingiest in developed worlds. Benefits levels are so low that many families are forced to rely on food banks. And over 1.5 million people are still living in destitution, meaning that they can't afford to eat, stay warm, or clothe themselves properly. In Northern Ireland, nearly a quarter of households are considered fuel poor. And this isn't just economic hardship, it's basically being on survival mode. And if you take a ride up north in London, you got the Elizabeth line, extensive metro, fast trains, modern bus systems, and ultra-fast broadband. But in other places, you're lucky if a bus even shows up. Transport funding is wildly unequal. London receives roughly $1,200 per person, but the Northeast barely over $500. And if the North had received equal funding, this would mean an extra $150 billion over the past decades. And the infrastructure gaps go beyond trains. Many towns have Victorian-era sewers, outdated water pipes, crumbling schools, and really slow internet. And some cities like Leeds don't even have a metro system. And while London's skyline is filled with cranes, high-rises, parts of Wales, Scotland, and Northern England look frozen in time. And this is what many economists call geography as destiny, where your postcode basically determines your life chances more than your skill does. And to really understand why many UK regions feel left behind, we really need to rewind. Because this collapse didn't happen overnight. In the 19th as well as 20th century, Britain was the workshop of the world. It was the first country to industrialize. Cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow became global powerhouses for steel, coal, textile, and shipbuilding. And by the 1950s, nearly 40% of the UK workforce was employed in manufacturing and heavy industry. British coal powered the empire, British steel built the world's bridges and ships, and British car makers like Rover, Jaguar, and Austin were symbols of engineering pride. But by the 1970s, the cracks were showing. Factories were aging, equipments were outdated, productivity lagged behind competitors like Germany, Japan, who rebuilt their entire industry with newer technology after World War II. And then came a storm of challenges. Global competition from Asia and Europe, oil shock in the 1970s, union unrest and strikes, and most of all, Thatcher-era de-industrialization. When Margaret Thatcher took power in 1979, she launched a radical restructuring of the British economy. The government privatized national industries, broke the power of the trade unions,
and that is the most important thing, the most enduring thing that is going to come out of this coal strike, a new birth of leadership.
And allowed many unprofitable sectors to die off. Over 2 million manufacturing jobs were lost. Entire industries, coal mining, shipbuilding, and steel collapsed. In 1981 alone, the UK saw the highest jobless rate since the Great Depression, with some towns reaching unemployment rates of 25%. Communities built around a single industry were left to rot, and some towns became an economic nightmare almost overnight. And there wasn't any sort of long-term replacement strategy. No Green New Deal, just promises that the market would fix itself. But it didn't. By the early 2000s, the UK completely transformed itself into a service-based economy. Finance, tech, education, media, these were the new growth sectors. But they were mostly concentrated in London as well as the southeast. Manufacturing today make up just 9% of GDP, down from nearly 30% in the 1970s. And while some high-tech manufacturing remained, like aerospace and car plants, these are the exception, not the rule. Automation has further reduced job numbers in factories that still exist. And Britain ranks behind countries like Slovenia and Slovakia in terms of industrial robot use. And worst of all, the government never developed an industrial policy to nurture new sectors the way Germany did. Germany protected its medium-sized manufacturers and invested in mentorships as well as regional infrastructure. And meanwhile, in the UK, entire skill ecosystems vanished. The coal miner's grandson didn't become a solar panel technician. He became unemployed or moved away or took a minimum wage job. Whole towns were built around industries that no longer exist. No comparable jobs to replace them. Outside of London, many commuters now rely on low-paid jobs, insecure work, gig work, retail, hospitality, as well as care work. These don't pay enough to live on. The result, entire regions trapped in low productivity, low pay, and low opportunity. And that's a long shadow of de-industrialization. It left behind not just empty factories, but broken identities, stagnant wages, and a lingering sense of abandonment that still shapes British politics today. And to really understand modern Britain, you had to understand the London effect. London isn't just one capital, it's a different economic planet. It hosts just under 15% of the UK population, but generate over 30% of the nation's GDP. It's a global hub for finance, law, media, and politics. The skyline is filled with cranes, luxury apartments, multinational headquarters. Tourists flock to it, foreign investors love it, and the salary, they're the highest in the country by far. And it's also about opportunity. In London, you have access to elite universities, cutting-edge healthcare, tech incubators, cultural institutions, and fast public transport. But in places like Doncaster, your bus might come an hour late, if it comes at all, and job options often limited to retail, care work, or Amazon warehouse. The internet's slower, the streets are crumbling, and for many young people, the only option is to leave, fueling a brain drain that makes things worse. Even basic infrastructure tells a story. And to be clear, this isn't just London's fault. It's a symptom of a government economy that centralized everything. Power, capital, investment, and media all flow through the capital. And the result is a country divided not just by class, but by postcode. You earn more, live longer, access better. And as one put it, Britain is no longer a south-north divide, it's a London versus everywhere else. And unless regional investment, infrastructure, and opportunity are rebalanced, that divide will continue to grow wider. So how does the UK compare to its peers? Let's start off with a country like Germany, a country that lost its entire empire and endured 2 world wars. Today, Germany is a global leader in manufacturing, engineering, and exports. It didn't let go of its industrial base, it modernized it. It supports its factories with strong vocational training and infrastructure investment. Japan also saw rapid growth through manufacturing. It embraced robotics automation in the 1980s, making it a leader in cars and electronics. South Korea went from poverty in the 1960s to becoming a tech and shipbuilding superpower. Its major companies like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG were supported by long-term government planning and export strategies. Even smaller countries like Sweden as well as the Netherlands have managed to balance service with a strong industrial sector, while still investing in worker protection and innovation. The UK, by contrast, put all of its eggs in one basket: finance. London became a global hub for banking, insurance, and consulting, but this created a lopsided economy, one ultra-rich capitalist city, and a ring of post-industrial towns left behind. In 2008, the global financial crash hit the UK hard, because finance was its crown jewel, but also its Achilles heel. And since then, real wages have stagnated, productivity have flatlined, and unlike Germany and Japan, Britain produces far less and imports much more. Its trade deficit is chronic, its supply chain are fragile, and its economic growth has slowed to a crawl. In fact, as of 2024, Britain ranked near the bottom of the G7 in terms of growth, investment, and wage progression. So yes, the UK is technically still rich on paper, but if you ask anybody outside of London, they might say something different. They might say that they used to build the world's ship, and now they can't even build a decent housing, and that's really the heart of the crisis. So is the UK a third world country? No, it's still rich, powerful, and globally influential, but it's deeply unequal economically, geographically, as well as socially. And you have some areas like central London on par with some of the richest cities in the world, but others resemble post-industrialized zones struggling with poverty, declining infrastructure, and declining public service. And many of the symptoms we covered, homelessness, failing hospitals, regional collapse, are things you expect in poor countries, not the 5th largest economy on earth. And some towns have child poverty rates over 35%. Many have life expectancy lower than Albania or Poland. And these numbers aren't just statistics, they're symptoms of a system that has failed the majority of the country. And perhaps that's what makes it feel worse, because the UK isn't falling because of lack of money, it's falling because of choices. Policy, underinvestment, and decades of uneven development have created this crisis. Coal, steel, shipbuilding, car manufacturing, all gone or hollowed out, and whether the country can level up remains to be seen. But for now, one thing is clear. For millions of people across Britain, the standard of living has fallen so far behind that the line between first and third world is now starting to blur. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, I hope you guys enjoy it. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe, and I'll keep making content like this in the future. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys again next time.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favorite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.